Oregon Ducks and the 4.5-point favorite North Carolina Tar Heels will know who their next opponent will be by the time their Final Four match-off tips off at 8:49 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, April 1st at the University of Phoenix Stadium. The second of the two national semifinal games features two household names and programs that have been at or near the top of the futures board throughout the season. For those that filled out a bracket, Oregon versus North Carolina wasn't a big surprise at this point. South Carolina versus Gonzaga, though, certainly is, so it will be interesting to see the betting handles compared for the two games. With North Carolina favored by a couple of possessions, the total is gradually increasing at 151.5, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see those two trends continue. Oregon and North Carolina are both loaded with high upside talent and a lot of recruits that had a galaxy's worth of stars next to their names. Like the previous game, there is an interesting West versus East angle to this one. But travel situations don't matter when you get to this point in the NCAA tournament. These games are scheduled for East Coast time, so they will both be played early for South Carolina and North Carolina. The Oregon Ducks head to the desert with a 33-5 record straight up. They've run through Iona, Rhode Island, Michigan, and Kansas to get to this point. Certainly the Ducks are used to playing in the Grand Canyon State with annual trips to Tucson and Tempe. The loss of Chris Boucher hasn't been a factor for Oregon yet, but this is the type of matchup where it could really stand out. Head coach Dana Altman needs to figure out a way to keep North Carolina off the offensive glass. The Ducks have enough scoring threats, but this is going to be a game won down in the tough areas because Oregon is a pretty mediocre rebounding team without Boucher's services. Fortunately, the format of the NCAA tournament allows Altman several days to figure out what he wants to do in terms of protecting the rim and the glass. The Ducks certainly come into the Final Four on a high note. After making the Elite Eight last season for the first time since 2007, the Ducks fell short of the Final Four. This is Oregon's first Final Four appearance since 1939, and as you can imagine, the tournament was much different back then. Dana Altman has 0 minutes coaching in the Final Four, while Roy Williams has 520 minutes coaching in the Final Four per ESPN. What Altman lacks in the Final Four coaching experience, he more than makes up for with a tremendously talented roster. Dylan Brooks is arguably the best player in the country. Brooks has scored 16.3 points per game in just 25.1 minutes per night of action. He's been right around his season average with 16.5 points per game in the NCAA tournament. But Brooks is 19 of 51 in his last 3 games. Playing in an enormous venue like the University of Phoenix Stadium is not a great place for finding your shot. Tyler Dorsey has been the standout star for Oregon in the tournament. He's scored 20 or more in every game and has been great from the field, shooting 34 of 51. The unsung hero, though, and arguably the most important player in this particular game, has been Jordan Bell. Bell has seen a big increase in minutes with Boucher out, and he has been spectacular. Bell had 11 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 blocks against Kansas. He's had at least 12 rebounds in every NCAA tournament game and had 10 rebounds in the Pac-12 Conference Tournament loss to Arizona. The crazy thing is that Bell, even with all those boards and that effort inside, has committed only 4 fouls over his last 5 games. The North Carolina Tar Heels are 31-7 on the season with wins over Texas Southern, Arkansas, Butler, and Kentucky to get to this point. This is the first time that North Carolina hasn't faced the highest seed possible in the tournament, but Oregon was downgraded a bit for losing Chris Boucher right before the tournament. It is very unfortunate that a championship caliber game had to be played in the Elite Eight, but North Carolina and Kentucky were seated in the same region, and Kentucky's gauntlet of a schedule finally caught up with them in a buzzer-beater loss to the Tar Heels. UK got a raw deal, to say the least, and North Carolina has had one of the easier routes with Arkansas and Butler prior to getting a fellow blue blood program in Kentucky. We'd have the opportunity to fade North Carolina if the game was Tuesday or Wednesday, but with a nearly full week to prep for the Final Four, the dramatic win over Kentucky isn't going to have a whole lot of carryover. The Roy Williams coaching experience advantage probably does not mean as much as people think. Some have speculated about Williams' in-game coaching abilities in recent years. His recruiting certainly speaks for itself, but the Tar Heels haven't won an NCAA tournament title since 2009. They lost at the last second last year. They've only made 3 championship game appearances in Williams' 14 seasons. It seems disingenuous to say only, but with the talent regularly in place in Chapel Hill, That seems surprising. From 2013 to 2015, UNC didn't even make the Elite Eight. There is national championship level talent on this team, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that North Carolina, unlike some of the other recruiting powerhouses, doesn't have a whole lot of one-and-done players. Leading scorer Justin Jackson is a junior, and so is second leading scorer Joel Berry II. Kennedy Meeks has grown into his frame and has grown as a player over his 4 years. The same can be said about Isaiah Hicks. One thing that could help North Carolina is that the Tar Heels get a lot of second chance points and like to get the ball inside the arc. Just over 30% of UNC's attempts were threes, while 38.6% of Oregon's shots were three-point attempts. In a deep shooting backdrop like this, North Carolina will be getting the higher percentage looks. We think that's the key, as North Carolina should have an easier time getting those interior looks. Kennedy Meeks and Isaiah Hicks don't have to worry about Chris Boucher. Jordan Bell has really stepped up his game, but he can only cover one guy. Oregon faced 3 jump shooting teams before playing Kansas, who does like to drive to the rim, but the Jayhawks were 5 of 25 from deep, and that was the end of it for them. They didn't have the interior players that North Carolina has. There's a mismatch in this game that clearly favors the favorite, so we'll side with the North Carolina Tar Heels at minus 4.5 points and expect them to move on to the title game. For more information and statistics on this event and every other sporting event this week, check out bangthebook.com. Bang the Book is your best resource for sports betting information before you make your weekly assault on the sports books.